talk about this with John Laughland, a lecturer of politics and history at the Catholic Institute of Higher Studies. John, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for your time today. It's great to get you on the programme. This story keeps on giving, doesn't it, John? I mean, my goodness me, I know you were listening to that report just now. I'm trying to understand, before I get into the finer details, I'm trying to understand the glum faces of some of those EU leaders. They looked pretty depressed as they sat there in a line, almost like kids lined up in front of a school headmaster. It's of course, following Friday's Alaska summit, where Trump and Putin were looking like almost like buddies. And then we have this emergency coalition of the willing shooting straight to Washington, D.C. Do you think they got anything that they wanted out of the meeting, John?
No. On the contrary, every single condition that Europe has put down has been rejected by Trump and indirectly, therefore, by Zelensky and indeed by them. The two main ones being no negotiations without a ceasefire. That's out of the window. Trump said repeatedly that there could be negotiations without a ceasefire. And the other major condition which the Europeans put down, which has now also been abandoned, which is much greater than the first, is the issue of territorial transfer. The biggest thing to come out of the White House summit was Zelensky going outside of the White House and doing a press conference outside the railings that surround the White House building, saying that he would talk to Putin about territory. Let's not forget, the last time he was in the Oval Office in February, a row broke out, as everybody recalls, over the issue of whether or not they should talk to Putin at all. That's how the row started. Zelensky said to J.D. Vance, "What are you talking about diplomacy? We reject it." Well, now here he is planning to meet Putin one-on-one to discuss the exchange of territory. Exchange of territory, which, as I say, the Europeans have specifically ruled out. They said again and again territorial integrity and so on. And yet now we see Putin saying, Trump saying in front of them, reading from a text at the desk in the East Room of the White House, that territory would be on the table. And this, of course, is an absolute, if it happens, there's no deal until there's a deal, as Trump always says. But Putin, if Russia were to agree, if Ukraine and Russia were to agree to an exchange of territory, to some sort of cession of territory, it's difficult to speculate exactly how far that would go. But even if it, let's say, were to be Crimea or something, that, of course, would be a substantial defeat for Ukraine and a substantial victory for Russia. And if there were to be a deal, if there were to be a peace deal, we're still navigating with a lot of unknowns. And I think this final point that I'll make is the key one. Then, as we all know, that would mean that there's no excuse for no more elections in Ukraine. And that, in turn, would probably lead to regime change in Kiev. And I expect that's what Russia is gambling on.
Yeah, it's a very, very good point to wrap up that statement there. Excellent point there, John. Can I ask you about there's some sort of collective security treaty for Ukraine? They keep referring this kind of Article 5 kind of thing that's exclusively only for NATO members. But there was this talk about a collective security deal for Ukraine, but there were no real details, John. Can we read anything into that?
Well, this is the big, I didn't want to try and say everything in my first answer, but this issue of security guarantees, troops, Article 5, etc., is obviously a very difficult issue for Russia to accept. My own view is that we have to go back to the statement made by Secretary of Defense Hegseth in February in Brussels, only a few days after he took office. If you read that statement, quite a short statement, he said, no NATO membership for Ukraine. By the way, I didn't mention that just now, but Trump took that off the table in a post on Truth Social on Sunday. So again, that's another condition that the Europeans have been forced to abandon. Mark Rutte said only recently, I think at the Hague summit, the NATO summit, he said Ukraine was on an irreversible path. That's been abandoned. That's the third thing that's been abandoned. But Hegseth said no NATO membership. Hegseth did talk about security guarantees, but he said no American troops. No American troops, and of course no NATO article, although they talk about Article 5, no actual involvement of NATO. Now, I think if there were to be even European troops, let's say French or British, in Ukraine, that would be a bitter pill for Russia to swallow. And Russia has said that it would not accept that in the past.
What does that mean, not accepting it? Sorry, John, what does that mean when Russia says we will not accept European troops on the ground?
I am wondering if that is the thing on which Russia will give ground. That's my question. I'm wondering if Russia has decided to give ground on this point, because after all, Russia has got to give something. I mean, no one's going to get everything they want.
Yeah.
And if I'm right in my hunch that Russia might give ground on this, then I suppose I could be wrong, but because definitely Russia has said it wouldn't accept that, because after all, foreign troops on Ukrainian soil is more or less what they started the war to avoid. Then if it's not American troops, the calculation might be, and I'm now speculating, everything I've said up to now is, I think, pretty factual, but I'm speculating now about the next step. If they were to agree to this in some form or another, then perhaps the calculation is that it would be, in fact, symbolic, that Britain and France can't put, they can't even put 20,000 troops into the field. There are 500,000 Russian troops in Ukraine. Yeah. It's a drop in the ocean on the western side. And if it were a multinational force, your reporter mentioned 30 nations, then that would just be complete chaos. It would be a meaningless, I think, militarily meaningless. And above all, I repeat, if there were to be an agreement, almost, I don't want to say on whatever terms, because obviously if Russia acquired territory, that would be a major victory. Then, I repeat, that would lead logically to a peace agreement, to the end of martial law in Ukraine, and to regime change in Kiev. Yeah. And if Russia got that, because one might assume, or at least hope or calculate, that there would be a different regime in Kiev, maybe a friendlier one that's friendlier to Moscow, who knows, then, I repeat, that would be a very major victory.
Yeah, John, just quickly, and I'm totally out of time here now, mate, but I was noticing earlier that when the gaggle of European leaders came to the White House, they all started parroting Trump's line, stop the killing, stop the killing, stop the killing. Why were they parroting Trump's old line? He's been saying it for months.
Well, I'm sorry, but President Putin said this some months ago. He said, whatever happens, they will come wagging their tails like dogs, obedient to the new master. And that is the relationship. I posted this morning the photograph taken from behind Trump's desk at the Oval Office, where the 7 dwarves were lined up in front of Trump. And I posted employees receiving their instructions from the boss. Yeah. And that is the relationship. So, of course, they're parroting his line. And the issue now in the days and weeks that come is, both on the Russian side and on the European side, will be not to be seen to be the side which breaks the agreement. So I think the Russians will want to avoid being seen as the side that breaks any agreement, and so will the Europeans. But they are desperate to be obedient vassals, and that is the position now that Europe has put itself into.
Yeah, and John, just quickly, forgive me for going on a little bit longer, if I may, but all this talk perhaps in the past 24 hours about a potential trilateral on the horizon between Trump, Putin and Zelensky, is it going to happen?
Well, I think it might, because nearly everything else that Trump has asked for has happened. And there's a particularly intriguing further humiliation for Europe in this, because Trump said that this trilateral should take place in Europe. Well, there's only one country in Europe where that can happen. Only one. And that is Hungary. Because Hungary has left the International Criminal Court over Israel. Therefore, there is absolutely no chance of any threat to Putin in Hungary. And if Hungary turns out to be the pivot of European peace, when Hungary took the presidency of the European Council last year, the Commission refused to go to Budapest to show their disapproval of Orban, and where Ursula von der Leyen openly attacked Orban, brutally attacked him in a speech in the European Parliament. If Hungary, the odd man out, the country that they all hate, the regime they all hate, turns out to be the key to European peace, then that really will be the final humiliation for these, as I say, 7 dwarfs.
Yes, wouldn't that really be quite something? What a great comment to wrap up our conversation here. John Laughland, a lecturer of politics and history at the Catholic Institute of Higher Studies. I just always love the opportunity to pick your brain, John. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Okay.